Hi there. In this video, we'll be covering how much does it cost to hire a ghostwriter. Understanding the rates for book ghostwriters and how to break down payments will help you weed out the wrong choices and approach the partnership with the right mindset. By the end of this video, you will learn the typical rates for book ghostwriters, how to break down the costs into milestones, and why trying to cut costs could actually get you into a lot of trouble. And stay tuned until the end of the video for a free gift. Let's dive in. The cost of hiring a ghostwriter typically centers on two different factors: the scope of the work and the ability level, the skill level of the ghostwriter. Those things are really important to keep in mind because you want to hire people who have a high skill level, and you want to make sure that you are paying them for the work they're completing and the work they're doing. You want to make sure that the scope and the payment level are in line. Typical book ghostwriting projects often start at about $25,000 for a full book to $35,000, and that can go as high as $100,000 or more. Obviously, that's a lot of money, but think about what you're getting in return. You're getting a book being written. You're getting your message, your story being told to the world. It's difficult sometimes to put a real value on that, what that means for you, how much it can help you, how much it can help you advance in the world to put this book out. So it's important to be able to understand making the most of your money, making the most of your spending, but also being realistic about what you want to accomplish through it. Now, when we talk about $25,000 or $35,000 or $100,000, that's not all at once. Please, please, please don't think that you're just paying upfront money and just expecting somebody to finish a book. That's not how it works, and that's not how it should work. You know, I would think about breaking down that chunk of money into payments, into milestone payments. When I work on a project, I typically like to break it down into 5 or 6 payments. So if we're looking at a $30,000 project, that might be 5 payments of $6,000 or 6 payments of $5,000. That's a much more manageable target than a big upfront cost. And there's accountability on both sides when you have that kind of structure in place. Paying that kind of money in milestone payments, I typically start the project with a payment up front, and then I will break down the rest of the payments into 4 milestones for deliveries that I've provided to the author. I've done something in order to get paid, and that keeps moving forward. And those milestones stand as inflection points in the project because they allow for either side, if this is not working out, to walk away. One of the key things is understanding if it's not working, but also being realistic about effort and money. From a ghostwriter standpoint, I've worked with clients who weren't paying me. I remember early in my career, I was actually working with somebody. He ran a solar energy company in New Jersey, and he and I started collaborating, and he wanted to write a book together, and he ended up not paying me. I wrote 2 chapters for him. The company was called Spectacular Solar, and you know, don't mind putting it out there because I didn't get paid for it. So it's just one of those things where it was frustrating. It was really, really frustrating to have an agreement in place and not be paid. And I had to chase payment, and then I eventually gave up because it wasn't worth my while. And it really wasn't even that much money to begin with. But it taught me an important lesson of recognizing that I am making sure that there are carve-outs to making sure that I'm not ahead of myself, that the author is paying me at intervals that are fair, that I'm being paid for the work I've completed, and there's this good give and take. I've seen it from the other side too, where authors will work with ghostwriters. They'll pay them a lot of money up front. Then the ghostwriter either disappears, they don't turn in high quality work. You know, there's all these problems, and then they're saying, well, I'm out all this money. That's a big problem. That's why I really recommend setting up smaller payments to start or milestone payments, and that way there's accountability on both sides. If money keeps coming and momentum keeps happening with the project, everything keeps running along smoothly. It's a great process. You know, when you're first starting on your book, you may try to cut corners by hiring a less expensive ghostwriter. They're either less experienced or they don't trust their abilities. That's really what it boils down to. You know, it really means that they think that their service isn't worth as much as some of the more established ghostwriters. Now, obviously, you can go in the opposite direction of that, and somebody might overprice their services. I've had those conversations too. But when somebody's charging $5,000 or $8,000 for a full book, or $10,000 for a full book, and it's clearly a lot further away from the typical rates, it tells me that they're probably not experienced or they don't trust their ability. You really want somebody who has a little bit more experience. That's not to say that you can't work with people with less experience, but I think there are red flags there with somebody who's less experienced and charging less money. It really says that they're not really trusting their abilities. Their skill is not comparable to a more established ghostwriter. Once you get to the $15,000 to $20,000 range, I think those are going to be a higher likelihood that they're professional. With milestones and with payments broken up, this isn't like a big bulk of money being paid up front. This is paying it out over time and making sure that what you're getting is the highest quality possible. I have a lot of conversations too about back-end payment, that people don't have the money up front to write the book, but they want to pay you with royalties or a cut of royalties once the book is completed. I typically avoid that arrangement. I have done it a couple times. I don't love it. Here's the reason why. It may take years before the book is published. Years. And that means that I'm now withholding payment for possibly years to come. What kind of relationship might I have with the author once the book is published? Maybe they don't want to keep continuing forward. Maybe they don't want to pay you. Maybe they're done and they don't want to bother spending the money. There's a lot of things that can just go wrong with that kind of arrangement, but the time element is a bothersome thing. I look at ghostwriting as I would with any other contract or service, like plumbing or signing on your house. When you work with a plumber and a plumber fixes your pipes, you don't turn around and say, well, I'll pay you 2 years from now, for the work you did today. Like you have a schedule in place to pay them, you make it happen, it works out. It's important that whatever arrangement you make with the ghostwriter is a fair one. If you do end up having some payment and some back-end pay, maybe that's something that the ghostwriter will go for. Another process that could lower the cost is actually giving them cover credit. Ghostwriters work behind the scenes. That's the part of being a ghost. It means you're hidden. It means that you're not in public view for a book. And that makes it difficult sometimes to promote the books that you've written. For example, I've collaborated on 2 books that were Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestsellers. I was not credited for one of them in any way. I wasn't even in the acknowledgments. So I've seen that book on bookstore shelves. And there's probably like 5 people in the world that know I worked on that book. I can't talk about it in other venues to talk more openly about it. It can be helpful when you're a ghostwriter to get cover credit, and that typically comes in either a collaborative author and ghostwriter or author with ghostwriter. The with credit is pretty popular for ghostwriters. It kind of just sends a message of this was a big impact, that they had a big role in this book. But it can be helpful to get your name out there a little bit more and let people know, I worked on this book, I'm really proud of it, I'm going to help promote it, I'm going to put it on my social platforms. People might turn to you and give you new work based on the book that you worked on. I've had that happen before where I was credited with a cover credit for a book, and people would turn around and reach out to me. Hey, I have this other project, this other opportunity that's similar. Because you worked on this book, I think you'd be great for that. It's awesome to be recognized in that way, and it's awesome to be able to publicly announce and put it out there that you worked on a book. So it's always a nice thing, and it's definitely a opportunity that people, if they're looking to trim costs on ghostwriting, I would pursue giving cover credit to the ghostwriter. Because that can help them open up opportunities in new ways. Another way that you can diminish the cost up front of ghostwriting is by doing some of the work yourself, by doing some of the structure work, focusing on hook, on outline, on audience, and really kind of coming to a ghostwriter with something that's ready-made or it's like a par-baked food item. You just have to you have to put it in the microwave, and then it's ready. Like you do all the prep work, you give it to a ghostwriter for some finishing, it spends a couple minutes in the microwave and now it's ready to go. If you're trying to trim costs, that's how I would kind of approach ghostwriting. And engaging a ghostwriter is doing the work yourself, engaging with them at a point where you've done a lot of the prep work and they just need to carry forward the vision of what you've laid out. So it's really great to be able to think about hook, outline, audience, and doing the work yourself. And at the time when you start working with a ghostwriter, the costs aren't going to be quite so high. When engaging with a ghostwriter, think about the outcome. Think about the outcome you want to achieve. This isn't just finishing a book. Sometimes it's a lot more than that. When people I collaborate with talk about getting their money back, they always talk about getting their money back. What does that look like? Does it look like book sales? Or does it look like an underlying sales funnel to help you drive leads and opportunities to your business or platform? Having that underlying platform and underlying funnel is going to help pay for this in multifold ways. Instead of thinking about just getting your money back in book sales, think about getting 1, 2, 3 leads, turning those leads into paying customers. How much can you charge them for working with your company or with you directly? Maybe you're a coach, and maybe you're somebody who has a high-profile business. Getting those clients and leads is so much more valuable than book sales. It's not always about the number of books sold. It's about getting the book in the right number of hands and getting those people interested in working with you and driving things forward. I would definitely keep that in mind as you think about your book. Think about what the underlying sales funnel looks like, and think about the buyer journey and the reader journey. What do you want them to do next? By connecting those dots, you're going to help pay for the cost of the book easily by driving leads and customers and opportunities instead of just focusing on selling book copies. All right, now that you watched this video about how much it costs to hire a ghostwriter, I'd love for you to actually have a conversation with a ghostwriter, me. Go to my website, goodghostwriter.com. You can click the link below, and there you can book a free one-on-one call to talk to me directly about what the process looks like, some of the challenges and opportunities that can come with book ghostwriting, and what the right path for your book looks like. Maybe it's ghostwriting, maybe it's coaching, maybe you got this handled yourself. I can just give you some free tips and guidance. But I'm happy to talk further about it and explore what your best options look like. Remember, good ghostwriting makes great books. I'm Dan Good. Thanks for watching.